Blood-red rust flaked from the human warship's hull as it drifted past the observation deck, its angular frame scarred and pitted like an ancient relic dragged from a planetary graveyard. Admiral Zeftar's mandibles clicked in barely contained mirth as he gestured toward the holographic display, where dozens of similar vessels moved in what could generously be called a formation, if formations were supposed to resemble the death throes of a drunken asteroid swarm. These humans, Zeftar's mandibles clicked in amusement, dare to patrol the neutral zone with those? The assembled delegates, crystalline Vexani, tentacled Morthak, and dozens of other species, rippled with harmonized laughter. Ambassador Cretan of the Trade Federation leaned forward, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light. Their ships appear to be rusting in space. More laughter echoed through the vast hall. Primitive iron-based construction, sneered General Vorthak, his biomechanical implants glowing with disdain. Our ancestors abandoned such crude materials eons ago. Their weapons are kinetic projectiles, literally throwing metal at us. From the human delegation's corner, Ambassador Diana Haley remained perfectly still, her weathered face betraying nothing. Captain Marcus Webb, seated beside her, gripped his chair's armrest until his knuckles went white. The humans have been granted membership in this council, Zeftar continued, but perhaps we should reconsider. Their fleets are an embarrassment to galactic civilization. When the hegemony inevitably comes, what will these rust buckets accomplish? The chamber erupted in jeers and chittering sounds that passed for alien laughter. Ambassador Haley stood slowly. If I may. The laughter died to whispers. You've analyzed our ships, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the vast space. Tell me, Admiral, what did your scans reveal about their composition? Zeftar's eye stalks swiveled dismissively. Iron-carbon trace elements, crude alloys that belong in a museum. And their power signatures? Negligible. Your fusion reactors are barely detectable. Haley nodded thoughtfully. I see, and you've observed our combat doctrine? Ramming speed and projectile weapons. Vorthak's laugh was a mechanical wheeze. Your species hasn't even developed proper energy weapons or quantum shields. Fascinating. Haley clasped her hands behind her back. Captain Webb, would you care to explain our limitations to the Council? Webb stood, his dress uniform crisp despite years of wear. With pleasure, Ambassador. He activated a small device, and new holographic displays materialized, technical schematics that made several delegates lean forward with sudden interest. You're correct about our materials, Webb began. Iron-carbon alloys. What you failed to detect is that every molecule has been quantum forged at the subatomic level. These crude hulls don't just resist damage, they absorb it. Kinetic, thermal, electromagnetic, all of it gets channeled into our internal systems. The whispers grew louder. As for our negligible power signatures, Webb's smile was razor-thin. Our fusion reactors are running at approximately 2% capacity. What you're detecting as barely functional is our idle state. Admiral Zeftar's mandibles stopped clicking. And those projectile weapons you find so amusing? Webb gestured, and the display showed cross-sections of human ammunition. Tungsten osmium cores wrapped in programmable matter. They're not just bullets. They're miniaturized AI systems that adapt to whatever they're about to hit. The chamber had gone dead silent. Captain Webb's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the vast space. You want to know the real joke? We've been holding back. Every engagement, every patrol, every clumsy maneuver you've observed, we've been operating under Protocol 7. What? Zeftar's voice was barely audible. Is Protocol 7? Haley answered, her tone conversational. Minimum force necessary to maintain the illusion of incompetence. The holographic displays shifted, showing recent battle footage. But now the human ships moved with impossible precision, their formations flowing like water, their weapons striking with surgical accuracy. Enemy vessels, Dominion cruisers, Trade Federation dreadnoughts, collapsed under concentrated fire that tore through their shields like tissue paper. These engagements, Haley continued, occurred in the past 72 hours. We've been at war for 3 days. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Delegates shouted in a dozen languages, demanding explanations, denying the images, calling for emergency sessions. Haley raised her voice above the din. The Hegemony made contact with us 6 months ago. They offered us a choice: join them in conquering the galaxy, or be conquered ourselves. She paused, letting the implications sink in. We chose a third option. The displays showed new imagery, vast human fleets emerging from hyperspace, their hulls no longer showing rust, but gleaming with technological modifications that made the aliens' most advanced ships look primitive by comparison. Protocol 7 has been lifted, Haley announced. The human fleet you've been mocking? It was never meant to fight you. It was meant to study you, to learn your weaknesses, to understand how your technologies work. Admiral Zeftar tried to speak, but only managed a strangled chirp. The Hegemony is coming, Haley said. They'll arrive in this system in approximately 6 hours. We've spent the last 3 days systematically dismantling their advanced fleets and client states. She gestured to the displays showing burning worlds and shattered armadas. Your empires, your trade routes, your military installations. Gone. Why? Cretan's crystalline voice cracked. Why destroy everything? Haley's expression softened slightly. Because the Hegemony feeds on subjugated civilizations. They use slave labor, conscripted soldiers, captured technologies. Every empire they conquer makes them stronger. She looked around the chamber at the terrified faces. We removed their food source. The chamber fell into stunned silence. You had a choice, Captain Webb added quietly. 3 months ago, we offered military cooperation, mutual defense treaties, shared technology development. His voice hardened. Every single one of you laughed us out of your council chambers. The displays shifted one final time, showing a new image that made every delegate freeze in terror. The Hegemony fleet, vast beyond comprehension, ships the size of moons, technology that warped space itself, was indeed approaching. But surrounding them, barely visible against the cosmic backdrop, were thousands upon thousands of human vessels. Not the rusty, clumsy ships the aliens had mocked. These were sleek predators that seemed to bend light around them, their hulls inscribed with symbols that hurt to look at directly. The Hegemony has never faced an enemy that systematically eliminated their support structure first, Haley said. They're about to learn what happens when you threaten humanity's neighbors. She turned toward the chamber's exit, Webb falling into step beside her. Wait, Zeftar's voice cracked with desperation. What happens to us? To our people? Haley paused at the threshold. That depends. On what? On whether you're willing to stop laughing at our ships. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The Hegemony will be here in 6 hours. Our fleet is in position. You have 5 minutes to decide if you want to surrender to them, or if you want to fight alongside the primitive humans you've spent decades mocking. The massive doors sealed shut behind them, leaving the council in darkness, save for the holographic displays still showing the approaching fleets. In the silence that followed, a new sound began to echo through the chamber. Not laughter this time, but something far more desperate. The sound of civilizations realizing they had just witnessed the rise of something they never saw coming. And in the void between stars, ancient Hegemony sensors detected an anomalous reading from the human fleet. Power signatures unlike anything in their databases, weapons that shouldn't exist, and ship configurations that violated known physics. For the first time in their 10,000-year reign of terror, the Hegemony began to experience something they had never felt before. Fear. But as their massive dreadnoughts prepared to engage what they assumed was just another primitive species, deep in the bowels of the lead human vessel, Admiral Diana Haley sat in her command chair and spoke 2 words that would reshape galactic history. Protocol 1. Every human ship in the fleet suddenly changed. The transformation was subtle at first, a shimmer along the hull plating, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt. Then the human ships began to unfold. What the Hegemony sensors had read as primitive armor plating peeled away in geometric patterns, revealing something underneath that made their quantum computers crash trying to process the data. The hulls weren't metal at all. They were crystalline matrices that pulsed with contained starfire. Admiral Kethmaran of the Hegemony First Fleet had conquered 47 star systems. He had witnessed the birth and death of civilizations, had crushed species so advanced they could manipulate time itself. But as he stared at the tactical displays showing the human fleet's metamorphosis, his 3 hearts began beating in discord. "Impossible," he whispered through his breathing apparatus. "Run full spectrum analysis again." His tactical officer's voice trembled. "Sir, the readings they're not making sense. The human vessels are showing power signatures equivalent to stellar cores. Their mass readings are fluctuating beyond our instrument's ability to measure." On the primary display, what had moments ago appeared to be a modest fleet of 5,000 ships, now registered as something entirely different. The vessels stretched and reconfigured themselves, their hulls flowing like liquid mercury before solidifying into forms that hurt to perceive directly. "Communications from the human flagship, Admiral." Kethmaran straightened his massive frame. "On screen." The view screen flickered, then displayed a human female in what appeared to be a simple naval uniform. But her eyes held depths that seemed to contain the wisdom of geological ages. "I am Admiral Diana Haley of the Terran Deep Fleet," she said, her voice carrying with impossible clarity across the void. "You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system." Kethmaran's mandibles clicked in what passed for hegemony laughter. "Human, you face the might of 1,000 worlds. Our ships number in the hundreds of thousands. Your pathetic fleet—" 25 seconds. The calm certainty in her voice made something cold slither down Kethmaran's spine. "You cannot threaten the hegemony. We are eternal. We are—" 15 seconds. On the tactical display, the human ships had completed their transformation. They no longer looked like vessels at all, but rather like fragments of reality itself had been carved into ship-shaped wounds in space-time. Energy readings spiked beyond the instrument's ability to register. 10 seconds. Kethmaran opened his mouth to deliver the order to attack, but the words died in his throat. Something was wrong with space itself around the human fleet. Stars were bending, light was twisting, and the fabric of reality seemed to be unwrapping. 5. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," Kethmaran screamed. "Initiate jump sequence now." 4. The Hegemony fleet's massive engines began spinning up, reality tears forming as they prepared to flee into hyperspace. 3. But the tears weren't opening. Something was holding space-time together, preventing their escape. 2. Admiral Haley's image smiled, not with malice, but with something far worse: pity. 1. She spoke a single word in a language that predated the formation of galaxies. "Begin." The human ships didn't fire weapons. They didn't launch missiles or unleash energy beams. Instead, they simply existed more intensely. Reality rippled outward from each vessel, like stones dropped in a cosmic pond. Where the ripples touched hegemony ships, those vessels didn't explode or disintegrate. They simply ceased to have ever been, not destroyed, but edited out of existence itself, along with all records of their construction, their crews' memories of serving aboard them, even the atoms that had comprised their hulls. Kethmaran watched in mounting horror as his mighty armada vanished ship by ship, each disappearance so complete that he found himself forgetting they had ever existed at all. Within moments, his fleet of hundreds of thousands had been reduced to a few dozen vessels, and even those were beginning to fade at the edges. "What are you?" he whispered. "What are you?" he whispered. Admiral Haley's expression remained gentle, almost maternal. "We are what humanity became when we stopped pretending to be what you expected us to be." The last of the hegemony ships around Kethmaran's flagship began to fade, their crews' screams cut short not by death, but by the complete negation of their existence. "The rust buckets," Haley continued conversationally, "were vessels built to our old specifications, pre-contact designs. We thought it might be educational for you to see what we were before we evolved beyond the need for physical matter to contain our consciousness." Kethmaran's flagship shuddered as reality waves lapped at its hull. Evolution? You're still biological. Are we? Haley tilted her head. Admiral, your species measures time in centuries. You think in terms of stellar cycles. But humans, we experience time differently. We've been in contact with you for 6 months. Do you know how long that is in accelerated human consciousness? The question hung in the void like a weapon. Approximately 47,000 years of subjective time. We've had millennia to study every aspect of your civilization, to understand the fundamental forces that bind your reality together. Her smile widened. And to learn how to unbind them. Kethmaran's tactical displays were showing impossible readings. The human ships weren't moving through space. They were rewriting the laws of physics around them, making space move around them instead. The Galactic Council was never our target, Haley continued. You were. But we needed to understand the full scope of your influence, needed to map every world you'd touched, every species you'd corrupted. Her voice hardened. Every civilization you'd made complicit in your atrocities. On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing throughout Hegemony space. Not ships, something far worse. Reality anchors. Haley's voice explained without her lips moving, speaking directly into Kethmaran's mind. We've placed them at every Hegemony stronghold, every slave world, every processing center. When we activate them simultaneously, your entire empire will experience what you've just witnessed here. You can't, Kethmaran gasped. The scale is impossible. Trillions of beings. We'll be freed from your influence, Haley interrupted. The slaves, the conquered peoples, the client species, they'll remain. But everything Hegemony, everything that carries your touch, will simply never have happened. The Admiral's flagship was now alone in space, the last remnant of the mightiest fleet in galactic history. Around them the human vessels hung motionless, their impossible forms warping local space-time. Why tell me this? Kethmaran asked. Why not simply erase me as well? Because someone needs to remember, Haley replied. Someone needs to carry the warning to whatever fragment of your empire survives the unraveling. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humanity offered friendship first, and when that was refused, we offered mercy. She leaned forward slightly. Tell them that both offers have now expired. Kethmaran's ship lurched as reality waves pushed it toward the edge of the system. He was being allowed to escape, the sole witness to the end of everything his species had built. And if they don't listen, he asked. Haley's image began to fade as the distance grew. Then they'll learn the difference between Protocol 1 and Protocol 0. As the flagship limped toward the system's edge, Kethmaran turned for one last look at the human fleet. But they were gone. Not departed. Simply, not there. As if they had stepped sideways out of reality itself. In the depths of space, quantum echoes carried Haley's final words across dimensions. Initiate galactic sweep. All Hegemony assets are designated for temporal excision. Estimated completion time, 17 minutes. And throughout 1,000 star systems, reality began to come undone. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Haley's communicator chimed softly. She glanced at the message, then looked up at the assembled delegates who had spent the last 6 hours in heated debate. Honored representatives, she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. The hegemony is no longer a concern. The chamber fell silent. However, she continued, standing and smoothing her jacket, we have a new situation. It seems that in our thoroughness, we may have accidentally erased several trade routes, defense networks, and communication arrays that connected your respective empires. She smiled apologetically. The good news is that humanity would be happy to provide replacement infrastructure. The terms are quite reasonable. Admiral Zeftar found his voice first. What are the terms? Haley's smile widened. Complete galactic demilitarization, universal abolition of slavery, and the establishment of a new interspecies council with humanity holding permanent peacekeeping authority. The silence stretched for long moments. And if we refuse? Krishan asked in a voice like breaking crystal. Haley gathered her papers with practiced efficiency. Then you'll discover why we built Protocol Zero. She headed for the exit, then paused at the threshold. Oh, and delegates, next time you see our ships, you might want to take them seriously from the start. The doors sealed behind her, leaving the council to contemplate their new reality. In the darkness of space, something that had once been human watched and waited, ready to reshape the galaxy according to humanity's vision of what civilization should be. After all, they had asked so nicely the first time. The transformation was complete. The galaxy would learn to laugh with humanity, not at them. Or it would learn not to laugh at all.